Okay, guys, so an Italian person doing doctoral work at Harvard submitted a paper to a journal, and it turns out that that paper had been taken from the work of another scientist. Two Chinese chemists falsely claimed to have published research on a collection of molecules that in fact doesn't exist. A Romanian mathematician published a paper that was an exact copy of an article published by someone else. When that was happened, not without good reason, the journals banned him from ever publishing there again. A Dutch anthropologist committed multiple acts of misconduct, including fabricating an entire data set. Bold. He also claimed to have published 61 articles that he never published. Even bolder. So look, most scientists are honest, but clearly some are not. And what my examples show is that scientific misconduct isn't restricted to a single country, culture, or field. Most of those examples illustrate scientific fraud, serious cases of misconduct, such as making up data or stealing someone else's work. There are more subtle ways of lying in science called questionable research practices, or QRPs. Two of the more common are Harking and p-hacking. Harking is an acronym for hypothesizing after results are known. It's easy. You simply reverse the course of good science. With good science, you create a hypothesis first. You know, an educated guess about something. Then you collect data to see if that hypothesis is right. With Harking, you gather and analyze data first, then you make up hypotheses to be consistent with the results. It's entirely dishonest, but guarantees that your hypotheses will be supported every time. P-hacking is lying with statistics. You conduct multiple unplanned analyses and then cherry pick the results that you like, the ones that fit your theory. So it's hard to know what % of scientists cheat. Those who do rarely broadcast it. But people have made informed estimates. Last year, Xu, Wang, and Kong published a review in the journal Science and Engineering Ethics. They found that about 3% of scientists anonymously reported lying, committing fraud. And so here's the part that I think is kind of shocking. 3% doesn't sound like a lot, right? There's about 7 million research scientists in the world. So if that 3% estimate holds for the population, that's 210,000 scientists that have committed fraud at least once. 12.5% of those surveyed admitted to questionable research practices. That's 875,000 scientists. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd call that a crisis. Science is supposed to pursue the truth, but we've got hundreds of thousands of scientists pursuing false truths. You know, we rely on science to solve serious problems like cancer. That can't happen when cancer researchers lie about possible cures. So why do they do it? Why do scientists commit fraud and engage in questionable research practices? The easiest thing is just to blame the individual. Right? And it's true, individuals deserve some responsibility. But simply blaming the individual misses the big picture, and it doesn't solve the problem. Fortunately, good science can help us understand bad scientists. Social psychologist Isaac Eisen created the theory of planned behavior to explain volitional action. Applied to the topic of scientific misconduct, it suggests 4 causes. First, misconduct is an intentional act. A scientist chooses to behave honestly or not. And what scientists choose to do today, they can choose not to do tomorrow. The good news, under the right conditions, today's cheater can become an honest researcher. Second, the intent to cheat is driven by a person's attitude about misconduct. Scientists have a favorable attitude about misconduct when they believe the positive outcomes outweigh the negative. An example of a negative outcome might be getting fired from your job. A positive one for a scientist might be publishing in a premier journal. If scientists believe that the negative outcomes are unlikely and the positive ones likely, they'll be more inclined to cheat. Simply put, scientists cheat when the pros outweigh the cons. Third, the intent to cheat is affected by subjective norms. A subjective norm is what you believe other people want you to do, and your motivation to comply with what those other people want. I'm talking about people like your boss or your coworkers, and for scientists, journal editors and reviewers. Scientists cheat when the people they care about approve or look the other way. Finally, the intent to cheat is influenced by what Eisen calls perceived behavioral control. Perceived behavioral control exists when you know you've got the resources to do something you want to do. Something like, fly a plane, build a building, or successfully get away with misconduct. Resources for scientific misconduct include things like knowing how to cleverly hark or p-hack, and working with co-authors who won't object. Scientists cheat when they've got the resources to get away with it. So the theory of planned behavior tells us scientists cheat when the pros outweigh the cons, when the people they care about approve or look the other way, and when they've got the resources to get away with it. If all three are true, it's a perfect storm for misconduct. It's this combination that drives hundreds of thousands of scientists to lie about their work, even when it harms other people. Consider assistant professors at any top university in the world. Assistant professors are bright people with advanced degrees like a PhD. In the US, top universities include the Ivy League and Big Ten schools and other Carnegie One research institutions like the University of South Florida. Many assistant professors are hired right out of graduate school. They spend their days teaching, serving on committees, and doing research. When they're hired, they know they have some period, usually 5 or 6 years, to prove themselves. Right? If they're successful, they get tenure, a guaranteed lifetime employment contract. If not, they're given 1 year to look for another job, then they're dismissed. Fired. Now, in truth, the criteria for tenure are often vague, and decisions are influenced by, office politics. The best way to get tenure is to publish a lot. Given the stakes, some assistant professors are tempted to cheat. Now, you can blame the assistant professor, but again, that misses the big picture, and it doesn't solve the problem. Let's try an exercise in empathy. Imagine that you're a newly minted assistant professor with a young family. You're working 60-hour weeks while your significant other cares for the home and raises your 3 kids. Maybe one's a baby. You've got 5 years to publish some number of articles in top journals and a handful or 2 of articles in lesser journals. But publishing in a top journal, guys, is hard. It's really hard. It's really, really hard. The majority of submissions, up to 95% typically, are rejected. You've got to create unique ideas, design clever studies, conduct complex analyses. You must impress an audience of other PhDs, MDs, or whatever. So let's say it's 4 years later. You've published 2 articles in top journals, and you have a few other pubs. You're going up for tenure next year. You're working on several projects, but only one of them has top-tier potential. You believe that if the numbers come out as you hope, that'll be your ticket to tenure. So, you enter the proper command into the computer, the command that's going to test your central hypothesis. If it produces the right results, you're good to go. If not, no tenure, no promotion, no pay raise. You'll have to start looking for another job. You'll have to move your family somewhere new, taking the kids out of school. And you'll all be leaving the friends you've made over the past 5 years. Then there'll be the shame of not making it, of not having what it takes to get tenure. The results come back, and they don't support your hypothesis. Now you're facing a moment of truth, maybe even a moral crisis. You can try to publish that paper with the non-significant results. That option's probably going to lead to a rejection, almost certainly if you submit to a top journal. But there's another option. You can look for data that don't fit your hypothesis. It's easy. So you create a scatter plot that shows a relationship between your two main variables, let's say x and y. Each dot on that scatter plot represents an observation. For example, a person's level of job satisfaction and performance. The plot includes it's a regression line, but let's just call it line of best fit, that reveals the pattern of the relationship. Dots that don't fit that pattern are far away from the line. Can you see that? There's a good chance that dropping these outliers will result in data that more closely conform to your hypothesis. And all you got to do is throw away a little inconvenient data. But if there's no good reason for throwing it away, you're cheating. And if you claim that hypothesis was supported, you're lying. And if you make that claim in a published article, you're committing scientific misconduct. You're pursuing a false truth. So what to do? What are the solutions to scientific misconduct? Let's take another look at the theory of planned behavior. So we know that scientific misconduct, that is, scientists cheating, happens when the pros outweigh the cons, when the scientists know that the people they care about will approve or look the other way, and they've got the resources to get away with it. The solutions follow from what we know. First, we've got to take a careful look and revise incentives. Most scientists, despite what I've been saying about the misconduct, most scientists are motivated by a love of doing research. They just like it. They find it interesting. Right? We need to make sure that the carrots and the sticks don't get in the way of that. That incentives for external reward don't undermine scientists' intrinsic motivation. Revising incentives will make attitudes about misconduct less favorable. We also need to better shape the social context. Who is it that approves of research methods that are very questionable? Who looks the other way? A deeper understanding of the views of editors, reviewers, and managers would be helpful. I got to be as serious as I can when I say this. We got to get on the same page about the damage caused by questionable research practices. Greater consensus on this issue will weaken subjective norms for misconduct. Finally, we can remove resources for misconduct by increasing accountability. I don't know if you've heard of the open science movement. Its goal is more transparent, robust research. One open science practice is called pre-registration. Scientists publicly report their hypotheses before doing a study. Another practice is data sharing. Scientists make their data widely available to other researchers. The open science movement may promote accountability to some degree. For example, pre-registration could discourage harking. and making data widely available could discourage lying with statistics. But a critic would say, these steps aren't really needed for honest researchers, and they're probably going to be ineffective for dishonest ones. Why? Scientists are smart. One that's determined to cheat could pre-register the hypothesis and then use already analyzed data to support them. Data upon which those hypotheses were based. Or the scientist could fabricate an entire data set and submit that after pre-registration. Bottom line, we can't rely on the open science movement alone to eliminate misconduct. Scientific misconduct is a societal problem, so society has to be part of the solution. For example, you can't expect tenured professors like me to revise incentives for tenure and promotion. We're the beneficiaries of the status quo. Society must be involved and consider these issues. By society, I mean professions, employers, and citizens like you. All of us are affected by science, so we should care about the world of scientists. If we care enough, we'll see a day when scientists stop pursuing false truths. We'll see a day when all scientists contribute to real knowledge. Thank you.